Let me welcome you to the Canada Revenue Agency's webinar on public policy dialogue and development activities by registered charities. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Simon, and I'll be your host for today's talk. The purpose of today's presentation is to familiarize you with the rules governing public policy dialogue and development activities carried out by registered charities, also known as PPDDAs. With election cycle coming up in Canada and abroad, charities may see an opportunity to highlight the policy issues that are important to their supporters. The CRA recognizes that charities have an important contribution to make to the ongoing public conversations around important issues facing Canadians. And the Income Tax Acts give them a lot of latitude to discuss the laws, policies, or decision of Canada or other countries through PPDDAs. However, there are some rules that charities need to keep in mind when carrying out advocacy work. A note that throughout the presentation, when we use charity or charities, we are referring to organizations that have been registered as charities by the CRA under the Income Tax Act. If you have any questions after the presentation, you can contact our client service representative at 1-800-267-2384. We will cover several key topics today. To begin, we will provide a brief historical context of the rules surrounding public policy dialogue and development activities. Then we will go into what public policy dialogue and development activities are, the requirement that PPDDAs further a stated charitable purpose of the charity, the prohibition of supporting or opposing a political party or candidate, other legal requirements that may apply to PPDDAs. We will wrap up with an overview of where you can find this information on canada.ca. Under the former quantitative limits specified in the Income Tax Act, a charity could devote a limited portions of its resources, generally about 10%, to nonpartisan political activities that were ancillary and incidental to its charitable purposes. In 2016, the CRA held a consultation with the public and the charitable sector on charities' political activities, led by a consultation panel from the charitable sector. In 2018, the Department of Finance amended the Act to remove the quantitative limits on the resources a charity can devote to political activities and to specify that charitable activities include political policy dialogue and development activities that further a charitable purpose of the charity. As a result of these changes, charities may now pursue their stated charitable purpose by carrying on unlimited public policy dialogue and development activities in furtherance of those purposes. However, charities continue to be prohibited from directly or indirectly supporting or opposing a political party or candidate for public office. In 2019, the CRA published new guidance, CG-027, to help registered charity better understand the new rules governing PPDDAs, which was later revised in 2020. So what are PPDDAs? PPDDAs are activities a charity carry on to participate in the public policy development process or facilitate the public's participation in that process. The CRA considers public policy dialogue and development activities to include those that seek to influence the laws, policy, or decisions of government, whether in Canada or a foreign country. PPDDAs include, but are not limited to, the type of activities Canadian courts have considered to be political activities, including providing information, including public awareness campaign to inform or persuade the public in regards to public policy. Such information must be truthful, accurate, and not misleading. Conducting research into public policy, distributing the research, and discussing the research and findings with the public. Disseminating opinion when participating in the development of public policy as long as they draw on research or evidence and they are not contrary to hate speech laws or other legitimate restrictions on freedom of expression. Advocacy to retain, oppose, or change a law, policy, or decision of any level of government in Canada or a foreign country. Mobilizing others to contact elected officials, public official, political parties, and candidates to all parties to express their support for or opposition to a particular law, policy, or decision of government. Making representations in writing or verbally to elected officials, public officials, political parties, and candidate, and appear at parliamentary committees to bring their views to the public policy development process. Providing forums and convening discussions where competing candidates and political representatives are invited to speak at the same event, or request written submissions for publication to discuss public policy issues. Communicating on social media to express their views and offer an opportunity for others to express their views in regards to public policy. To be eligible for registration, the Income Tax Act requires a charity's stated purpose to be charitable. A stated purpose is one that appears in the charity's governing documents, such as articles of incorporation, constitution or trust, and what is charitable is defined by the Income Tax Act and common law. It is important to know that the common law provides that political purposes are not charitable purposes. Political purposes are defined in the common law as purposes that seek to either further the interests of a particular political party or support a political party or candidate for public office. Retain, oppose, or change the law, policy, or decision of any level of government in Canada or a foreign country. So, this means a charity cannot have a political purpose. The purposes stated in its governing document must not refer to influencing the laws, policy, or decisions of government, even if most or all of its activities are PPDDAs. We appreciate that it may seem a little unusual that a charity can devote all its day-to-day time, effort, and resources to changing a law, but its purposes in its governing document can't mention changing a law. However, this is the way the Income Tax Act has been written, and it is the CRA's role to administer the law as it stands. Our guidance, therefore, tries to be as clear as possible on this point to help charities navigate this requirement. A charity may engage in unlimited PPDDAs that further its stated charitable purposes, provided the charity never directly or indirectly supports or opposes a political party or candidate for public office. We will review what this means in a few minutes. In other words, a charity is free to advocate for retaining, opposing, or changing any law, policy, or decision of government in furtherance of its charitable purpose. A charity's PPDDAs further a stated charitable purpose if they satisfy both of the following criteria. The PPDDAs relate to the charity's stated charitable purpose, and The PPDDAs, when considered together with the charity's stated charitable purpose, provide a charitable benefit to the public. In this sense, PPDDAs are like any other charitable activity. In this context, a charity could, for example, carry out PPDDAs to relieve poverty by contributing to the development of government policies in matter relating to poverty relief, or advance education by contributing to the development of government policies in matter relating to the regulation of education. To illustrate these requirements, here is an example. A charity operating a primary school emails parents of its students' body asking them to contact their elected officials to express their opposition to the government's decision to cut funding for public schools. The charity can carry out this type of PPDDAs to further a stated charitable purpose, such as to advance education by operating a primary school for children of Town ABC. The PPDDA relates to the charitable purpose of advancing education and, when considered together with the charitable purpose, provide a benefit to the public. However, the charity cannot have a purpose such as to call for more government funding for public schools in its governing document. This is a political purpose as it refers to influencing the decision of government and is therefore not charitable. As another example, if a charity wants to carry out PPDDAs to advocate for the implementation of public policy to reduce carbon emissions, it should be constituted for a purpose such as to protect the environment for the benefit of the public by conserving or restoring ecosystem and biodiversity on a long-term basis, which focuses on the charitable purpose the PPDDAs are meant to achieve the protection of the environment. It cannot be constituted for a political purpose such as to advocate for stronger legislation to address climate change, which refers to influencing the law of government and is therefore non-charitable. The rules of the Income Tax Act allow charities to carry out a wide range of PPDDAs. For example, a charity with a stated purpose to promote health by operating mobile clinics that delivers healthcare services to underserved areas can carry out various type of PPDAs such as making representations to elected officials to advocate for healthcare reform to improve access to healthcare services, communicating the charity's views on social media platform against a municipal government zoning decision to permit smoking on restaurant patios, calling on the public to contact their elected official to express their support for government action to lower the cost of prescription drugs. These PPDDAs are linked to the charity's stated purpose of promoting health, and when considered together with the stated purpose, they provide the public benefit of the purpose, which is to prevent or relieve mental or physical health conditions. However, if the charity was constituted for a purpose to advance the public appreciation of the arts, for example, the charity could not carry out these PPDDAs as they would not be linked to the charity's stated purpose. In this case, the charity would need to add a purpose in its governing document, such as a purpose to promote health, in order to carry out those PPDDAs. Under the ITA, a charity can never directly or indirectly support or oppose a political party or candidate for public office. These type of activities are not PPDDAs, and charities cannot carry on any such activities. A charity may publicly agree or disagree with the decision or position of government, but in doing so must not support or oppose any political party or candidate for public office. As a general guideline, a charity's communication should focus on the policy issue under the discussion and not refer to any candidate or political party. Direct support or opposition means either of the following: the charity's external messaging, for example, social media posts, website materials, print publication, speeches, communicate that it supports or opposes a political party or candidate. The charity transfer any of its resources, for example, financial, human, or physical resources, to a political party or candidate, or allows a political party or candidate to use its resources at below fair market value. Indirect support or oppositions mean either of the following: the charity's records or internal messaging explicitly reveal it carries out on an activity that support or oppose a political party or candidate. The charity transfer any of its resources to a third party to be used to support or oppose a political party or candidate. Three key definitions to keep in mind when it comes to PPDDAs are: first, candidate. The CRA considers a candidate to be a person who meets the specific definition in the applicable election legislation. For example, a candidate in a federal election would be a person that meets the definition in the Canada Election Act. Charities must not devote resources to supporting or opposing the election of any individual, even if they are not an official candidate. Second, the CRA considers a political party to be an organization with a fundamental purpose to participate in public affairs by endorsing one or more of its members as candidates and supporting their election. And lastly, public office. The CRA considered a candidate for public office to include a candidate seeking election to any of the following: the House of Commons, or a provincial or territorial legislative assembly, national assembly or parliament, band council, regional or municipal government, or similar entity. To provide some example of prohibited direct or indirect support or opposition of a political party or candidate for public office, a charity cannot, for example, endorse a candidate for public office over social media, tell people in person not to vote for a political party, send its board members to accompany a candidate in an election campaign as representative of the charity. Indirect support or opposition can include, for example, a charity's internal documents states that it will oppose a political party that takes a different views on certain policy issues by holding a public demonstration where the party is gathering. A charities assigned its staff to work for a nonprofit organization on the understanding that the staff's time will be used to support a candidate's election campaign. There are many ways a charity can undertake PPDDAs that do not amount to supporting or opposing a political party or candidate for public office. The rules of the Income Tax Act on PPDDAs also do not apply to representative of a charity who are involved in politics on their own personal time. A charity may carry out PPDDAs that support or oppose a law, policy, or decision of government that a political party or candidate also supports or opposes. A charity can do this at any time as long as it's doing so the charity does not refer to or otherwise identify the political party or candidate. The actions a political party or candidate may independently take do not transform to activities of a charity into direct or indirect support of or opposition to that party or candidate. What the CRA considers is the activities of the charity itself. For example, a charity's PPDDAs are not, nor do they become, support of or opposition to a political party or candidate if a political party or candidate is commonly known or understood to have the same views as a charity on a particular issue or publicly communicates the same views on the issue. A charity can also inform the public of the policy positions of all parties or candidates, or their responses to policy questions. This is the case even if it is obvious a party or candidate shares or opposes the view of the charity. A charity may do this by publishing the information on its website or social media platform as long as it presented in a neutral fashion. A charity may also hold candidate debates that are moderated to ensure that all candidates are given an equal opportunity to present their views and answer questions. A representative of a charity, such as a director, may be involved with an election, political campaign, or other political process in their own personal, private capacity as individuals. However, a charity must never use its resources, such as office space or supplies, when human resources, such as employees or volunteers, to support that individual's personal political involvement. Representative of a charity can also publicly voice their personal views on political issue, but must not use events or function organized by the charity. The charity's publications or other resources, such as platform to voice their views on these issues, representative of a charity, particularly leaders who wants to speak or write in their individual capacity, should indicate that their comments are personal rather than the views of the charity. This is particularly important in the case of social media, where it may be difficult to tell whether a representative's message reflects his or her personal views of those of a charity. As an example, a charity's director may be a candidate for public office and want to campaign during the election. The prohibition of directly or indirectly supporting or opposing a political party or candidate does not apply to a representative of a charity in their own personal, private capacity as individuals. As such, the director is allowed to campaign on their own personal time using their own personal resources. The director can also speak about their views outside of the charity's events and function, but should always indicate that their views are their own and not those of the charity. However, the charity cannot make its resources available to support the director's campaign, including office space, supplies, and human resources like employees or volunteers. The charity should also refrain from using its events or functions, social media outlets, or publication to provide a platform for the director to campaign or express their views. This would amount to supporting a candidate for public office, which is prohibited by the Income Tax Act. To provide another example to further its purpose to provide settlement assistance to newly arrived refugees, a charity would like to carry out PPDDAs to support government policies that facilitate the issuance of work and study permits for immigrants. The charity can tell supporters to contact their elected official to express their support for this type of policy. Communicate the charity's views on the policy issues without referring to any candidate or political party. Hold a debate on the policy issue to which all political parties are invited to present their views. Publish the voting record of all member of parliament on this policy issue. The charity cannot tell supporters not to vote for a political party that opposes this type of policy. Communicate the charity's views on the policy issue by referring to a candidate or political party that shares the same views. Invite only one candidate to an election who shares the charity's views to speak to the charity's supporters. Single out the voting pattern of a particular party or candidate on the policy issue. A charity that intends to carry out PPDDAs should be aware of other federal, provincial, or municipal requirements that might apply these types of activities, such as the Canada Election Act, the Lobbying Act, the First Nations Election Act, provincial lobbying and election legislation. A charity that carries on allowable PPDDAs is not exempt from meeting any provincial requirements on the use of its resources, such as any restriction on the use of charitable assets. With election cycle coming up in Canada and abroad, charities may see an opportunity to highlight the policy issues that are important to their supporters. When doing so, charities must be careful to only engage in PPDDAs that comply with the rules of the Income Tax Act. Some key reminders. PPDDAs are only allowed when they further a stated charitable purpose of the charity. As such, a charity should not seek to oppose or change a law, decision, or policy of government that is unrelated to its stated charitable purpose. It is also important for the charity to keep adequate books and records showing how its PPDDAs further its charitable purpose. There is no limit on the amount of resources a charity can use for PPDDAs. In this context, a charity may devote up to 100% of its resources to carrying out PPDDAs that further its stated charitable purposes. A charity cannot support or oppose a candidate or political party directly or indirectly. As such, when opposing or supporting a decision, law, or policy of government, a charity's communication should focus on the policy issue under discussion and not refer to any candidate or political party. Other federal, provincial, or municipal legislation may apply to a charity's PPDDAs, such the Canada Election Act and the Lobbying Act. As such, we recommend that you familiarize yourself with these other legal requirements before undertaking any PPDDAs. If you would like to carry out new PPDDAs but are unsure whether they would comply with the rules, we encourage you to reach out to our client service representative who will be able to assist you. In case you missed something, or if you'd like to do some additional reading, or you'd like to revisit the information later, here's how you can find it in our website. Our Charities and Giving A to Z Index is accessible right off our main landing page. You can search for any charity-related topic with even just a keyword. There are over 400 topics you can find here. Once you are at the A to Z Index page, you simply type in whether you're looking for. You'll notice here we typed in public policy, and it populated different possibilities. The third option is our guidance on PPDDAs. For more information on PPDDAs, you can also follow the link to our guidance here. This is the number to reach our client service representative dedicated for charities, 1-800-267-2384. There you can speak directly to one of our representatives. They are available to help you Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. We hope we were able to answer your questions. We will be sending you a link to an online survey about today's webinar. Please take a few moments to complete the survey. Your feedback is really important to us. It helps us evaluate the effectiveness of our webinar and plan for our future outreach activities. If you would like to receive recent news and updates from the CRA, we recommend you sign up for our electronic mailing list at canada.ca/charities-what's-new. Thank you.